Phil Mickelson is one of the most famous golfers of all time. Hate him or love him, Phil is that guy who couldn't care less about people's opinions on what he says. Phil Mickelson was one of the first professional golfers and well-known players to ditch the PGA for LIV Golf. And if you doubt he has any regrets for betraying his former tour, then his recent swipe at the PGA should do the convincing. Stick around to the end to find out the details. From PGA to LIV, Phil Mickelson is an American pro golfer who currently plays in the LIV Golf Series. While still on his former tour, Mickelson won 45 events, including 6 major championships, 3 Masters titles, 2 PGA championships, and 1 championship. In mid-2022, Mickelson announced that he'd no longer be playing on the PGA Tour, as he'd made his way to the Breakaway Series. And this didn't come as a surprise, as pundits had already predicted prior to his switching allegiance that Lefty would soon be on his way to the LIV Tour. And surprise, surprise, he was. Greg Norman, the LIV Tour chief executive, described him as one of the best golfers globally whose contribution to the game cannot be overstated. Phil Mickelson is one of the greatest golfers of this generation, and his connection to fans around the globe and contribution to the sport cannot be overstated, and we're grateful to have him, said Norman. Mickelson's first swipe at the PGA Tour. Although joining LIV might be the root of the unending feud between Mickelson and the PGA, his first major swipe at the association came when he was still on tour, but was concluding plans with Norman to switch allegiances. It turns out that the comments were part of his biography, written by reporter Alan Shipnuck, and apparently, he didn't hold back in lashing out at the PGA Tour, while explaining why he was engaged in conversations about joining LIV Tour. He explained why he'd rather work with the Saudis instead of the PGA. They're scary mother you-know-what to get involved with. We're aware they killed Khashoggi and even executed people for being gay over there, but I wouldn't consider it because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to transform how the PGA Tour operates, Phil continued. Because we, the players, have no recourse, the PGA Tour has been able to get by with coercive, manipulative, strong-arm tactics. As nice a guy as Jay Monahan comes across, if you don't have leverage, he won't do what's right, and the Saudis have finally given us that leverage. Just in case you don't get all the gibberish, he meant he was one of the brains behind the Breakaway Tour, which at the time was only proposed, and he was only concerned about the cash and not the country's oppressive regime. Although Mickelson would later apologize, blaming Shipnuck for using off-record statements, the damage had already been done. He received widespread criticism from the golf community and his colleagues, including Rory Mclroy, Billy Horschel, Tiger Woods, and Brooks Koepka, who described his comments as naive, selfish, and idiotic. In reaction to Phil's allegations, Shipnuck said there was no off-the-record agreement. Mickelson called me up and opened a vein. To now claim that the controversial comments were off the record is totally false and duplicitous. Call Mickelson a somewhat confused guy and you wouldn't be wrong. A couple of months down the line, the 6-time major championship winner made a U-turn denying ever having an interview with Alan Shipnuck. Crazy, right? So I will reiterate, I never did an interview with Alan Shipnuck. I find that my experience with everybody associated with LIV Golf has been nothing but incredibly positive, and I have the utmost respect for everybody I've been involved with, Mickelson said, but the internet never forgets. And soon, pictures of his apology after the controversial statement began to flood the internet. Many took to Twitter and called Phil untrustworthy based on some of his recent statements. But trust Lefty. He never uttered a word nor replied to fans who called him out for being duplicitous. Maybe Shipnuck was right about his duplicitous nature, after all. Lefty takes another dig at the PGA Tour. So again, Mickelson took another swipe at the PGA, and this time he wasn't taken too seriously. The golf community isn't in much of a trusting mood for Mickelson's statements anymore. Now that you know this obvious truth, how about giving this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more interesting golf videos? You see, the PGA Tour recently announced an increase in prize money to a record $415 million, guaranteed league minimum earnings, travel stipends, and much more. The schedule includes the 4 majors with a record $415 million in prize money and $145 million in bonuses. 3 FedEx Cup playoff events will award $75 million in prize money. Explaining the tour changes, the PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan said in a statement, "We've heard from the golf community, and from the overwhelming sentiment, it was evident that they wanted more consequences for the playoffs and the FedEx Cup regular season. We feel we've accomplished all of these objectives and more." Monahan also said the tour wasn't out to compete with a foreign monarchy attempting to buy golf. Let me be clear, I'm not being naive. If this is an arms race and the only weapons available are dollar bills, the PGA Tour can't compete, said Monahan at a news conference. The PGA Tour cannot compete with a foreign monarchy spending billions of dollars attempting to buy the game of golf. But after finishing the second round at the LIV Tour's Boston event, Phil sat down for a post-game interview where he took a jab at the recent changes announced by his former tour organization. Lefty commented on the fact that in spite of protesting LIV Golf last year, the PGA Tour was now trying to replicate it. Phil chuckled, saying, "It's great that they magically found a couple of $100 million. That's amazing." Despite his grievances with the PGA Tour, the world's oldest major winner was happy with the PGA's major changes, especially for the tour players who would benefit from the changes. "I feel happy that the guys have a voice and are being valued, and they're being heard," said Mickelson. Mickelson also stated that the PGA Tour members should be appreciative of the Saudi-backed series. Initially, it was stated very clearly that nothing was going to happen, Phil said of the tour's initial reluctance to make changes. Nothing was going to change unless there is leverage, and all players should be appreciative of what LIV is doing. Call him egoistic or arrogant, he could care less. After all, he was given $200 million simply to play, not win. And jumping ship has certainly been profitable for the golfer. So what do you make of Phil Mickelson's comments about the PGA Tour? Is he genuinely happy for the players, or does he want to grab the headlines? Talking about making the headlines, did Bubba Watson just prove LIV Golf rumors are true? Click this video right here to find out now. Trust me, you definitely don't want to miss it.